Hello, Symposius. I'm Dr. Angela Puca, Religious Studies PhD and University Lecturer, and this is your online resource for the academic study of magic, esotericism, paganism, shamanism, and all things occult. Today, we have a couple of special guests on the channel, and those are the co-founders of RENSEP, the Research Network for the Study of Esoteric Practices. This is a research network that we will talk about in today's discussion, and also about the importance of bridging the gap between the community of academics and that of practitioners, which is also what I'm trying to do with this channel. So I think that the mission that I have is very similar to that of RENSEP, and I've been collaborating with them for I think a couple of years now. So I'm really pleased to introduce you guys to RENSEP. So welcome here to Angela's Symposium, Andrea and Bernd.
Hi, Angela. Thanks for having us.
Hi, Angela.
So I'd like to start with a little bit of an introduction. So can each of you tell us a bit more about your own journey, and both academically and in the world of Esotericism, if you want to, if you feel comfortable sharing that, and what led you to co-found RENSEP? Andrea, you
Yes,
can start.
I can start. So I have a fascination for esotericism and esoteric practices since a very young age. And when I started my university journey, I was not aware that esotericism could be studied academically. So I did something else. I graduated in translation studies. And then I worked for several years as a translator and also as an entrepreneur in the professional services industry. And since a couple of years, I decided to redirect my career toward academia. So I did another master in religious studies with a specialization in spirituality and religion. I wrote my master thesis on the intersection between Islamic and Jewish esotericism. And I'm currently looking for a PhD position to continue my research at a doctoral level. In addition to that, my contribution to the field of esotericism is the creation of the Research Network for the Study of Esoteric Practices, RENSEP, whose main objective is to bridge the gap between scholars and practitioners. So this idea comes, as far as I'm concerned, from a personal experience that I had between 2014 and 2018. I participated in a series of private encounters between a yoga scholar and an experienced yogi, a practitioner. And so during these encounters, we were reading the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, and both the scholar and the practitioner were interpreting the text. And these encounters led to a PhD project which challenges current scholarly interpretations of the text. So I could experience firsthand the benefits of having this conversation between scholars and practitioners, and I decided to encourage this type of collaborations more systematically through RENSEP.
What about you, Bernd?
Yes, hi. I'm Bernd-Christian Otto. I'm a scholar of religion. I work at the University of Erlangen in Germany, in Bavaria, where I also co-founded a Center for Advanced Studies called Alternative Rationalities and Esoteric Practices from a Global Perspective. This is, so to speak, my daily butter and bread job. I graduated with a PhD thesis on the conceptual history of magic in 2009. This is where my own journey into the world of magic particularly began. So I was struck by the impossibility to define magic in a manner that the majority of scholars would agree. So I tried to solve this riddle, the riddle of defining magic, by historicizing the term. And so that was my PhD book. And after that, I embarked on a career at various universities and continued my studies into the history of magic, especially Western ritual magic. And I did quite a bit of research from historical angles. So I worked on ancient, medieval, also Arabic texts, early modern, book collections. But in recent years, I moved more and more into modern magic, present day magic practitioners, and I also widened my methodological portfolio. So I began to do interviews. I did several years of field work in a neo-shamanic movement, and I also explored methods of practitioner scholarship. So I also developed the rule that I want to practice what I see in order to get a better understanding for practices and practitioners. And so this is also one of my hobby horses since a few years, is exploring practitioner scholarship and also developing fresh methodologies for doing that. And out of all these endeavors came the desire to co-found RENSEP together with Andrea as an attempt to bring the practitioner community and the scholar community closer together for what we call co-production of knowledge.
Now, what you said just sparked a question, like my own research curiosity about the term magic, because I was at King's College just a few days ago, and I was helping on a research project, and there was a lot of discussion around certain terminologies related to esotericism, and one of these was magic, and there was another scholar who was claiming that magic is almost a useless term that should not be used at all unless it is an emic term, which means, in case people are not familiar, used by the practitioners. And I know that you have historicized it to resolve the complexity of defining this term in a way that is meaningful and accurate. And I've also heard you saying that you define magic as a floating signifier using a little bit of a Foucauldian methodology. So I was wondering, given that you moved from the history of magic to the contemporary side, do you still find the term magic is useful, and how would you define it? What is also your methodology to define it?
So the older I get, the more useful I consider the term magic. I began in my PhD thesis with exactly the same claim, namely that it's not a floating, it's an empty signifier, and we should stop using it. But no one followed my suggestions in my book. So I thought that I should maybe change my strategy. And so over the years, I shifted from empty signifier to floating signifier, which of course means that the word changes its meaning depending on the context of its use. But if you look at many different uses over the centuries and millennia, and also present day uses of the term magic, I think there are still some stable features that you can identify. And I've tried to identify 4 semantic patterns, which are part of the semantic field of magic, and which I think justify its use under certain circumstances. And these 4 semantic elements are power. So magic means power. Second, magic means miracle, so something extraordinary, uncommon. Third, magic means ritual, so kind of a repetitive behavior. And power, ritual, miracle. And the 4th component is, I think, wish fulfillment, or we could say kind of instrumental practice-oriented relationship to the means of the practice. And there are many more semantic notions that have come up in the history of magic, but I think these are the 4 core notions. Now, the problem is all of these 4 notions, they are also part of the semantic field of other terms like religion. So religion also has the notion of power, miracle,
ritual and
ritual, of course, and there are many forms of instrumental religion or religious wish fulfillment. The basic one being prayer, for instance, in most major religious traditions. So it remains tricky, and there you have to add a second component, namely the discursive perspective. So what is the discourse someone is located in when he or she uses the term magic? And then it can become an othering category or an identificatory category. So there are these two big discourses, which I differentiate as discourse of inclusion and discourse of exclusion. And depending on the location of the speaker, he or she may use these four notions, but either in a polemical or in an identificatory way. And from there, you can move on and try to reverse engineer the concept. So this approach I have tried to coin discursive study of magic, where you try to study individuals who practice, who self-proclaimed magic, but you can still try to understand what they mean in a certain situation when they use the term. And through this, you can also develop a dynamic ritual history of magic, because what self-proclaimed magicians or practitioners of magic have practiced over the last 2 millennia changes all the time. So you can write a dynamic history of self-referential magicians, where the ritual art, which is called magic, undergoes a lot of changes, innovations, adaptations. There is also a certain form of stability. So it's complicated, but I think you can still use the term in a meaningful way when you acknowledge all these complexities.
Yeah, so you are in favor of using the term magic analytically as an analytical tool in scholarship.
In certain contexts, yeah. So in the last years, with RENSEP, we have strategically chosen to use
Esoteric practices
as our main category. And also in Erlangen, in my academic project, we also have chosen to use the term esoteric for strategic reasons, because I think from a certain perspective, it's the broader category, and magic can be a subcategory.
And witchcraft as well, I suppose.
And witchcraft and sorcery or paganism or and so on and so forth, all these disputed terms. But of course, if you use esoteric, you have to qualify esoteric more narrowly with a good definition, which is also tricky, but that's at least what we tried.
So what are the esoteric practices that RENSEP works with, and in what way does RENSEP engages with them?
Maybe I can answer this one. So we use the term esoteric practice as a second order category, so as a purely ethic term. And we have a heuristic definition, which is based on 4 criteria. The first one is controllability. Esoteric practitioners describe spiritual processes which are to a large extent controllable. The second criteria is individualization. Esoteric practices tend to promote individualized forms of spirituality. The third one is self-empowerment. Esoteric practices ascribe large ritual power to the practitioner. And the fourth one is experience. So esoteric practices stress the importance of personal experiences. So it's a very loose definition, I would say, that it's simply there to allow us to gather material and to compare different practices from different cultural and religious backgrounds. So we include, of course, Western forms of esotericism, like magic, ceremonial magic, but also practices such as shamanism or even yoga could fit into our definition of esoteric practice. So it's a very broad definition, I would say.
And tell us a bit more about RENSEP. What is RENSEP? What is its aim? Why does it exist? What does it do?
Yeah, RENSEP is a non-profit organization based in the UK, whose purpose is to promote and advance the interdisciplinary and comparative study of esoteric practices from a global perspective. RENSEP is four things at once. It is an interdisciplinary network which encourages the participation of researchers from different disciplines, and also the participation of practitioners. So we want to create strategic collaborations between scholars and practitioners, as I mentioned in the introduction. RENSEP is also an online platform. So we provide an online platform which serves as the cognitive and interactional space where people can interact and study esoteric practices. RENSEP is also a charitable association that funds innovative and disruptive research into esoteric practices. We have so far funded 6 projects. And finally, RENSEP is a public education provider. As you know, Angela, we publish content in the private area of the platform, such as video content and blog articles, but we have also recently launched a peer-reviewed journal titled Praxis Knowledge, which focuses on the practitioner scholarship.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And if people sign up to your platform, which is rensep.org, you will also find my videos, because I have also made some content for RENSEP. So if you guys are interested in seeing those videos, you can sign up to RENSEP. So basically on RENSEP, people can, it's a bit of a social network, because obviously I'm also on RENSEP, guys. So if you sign up, you can also connect with me. But there are lots of practitioners and lots of scholars. So it's a bit like a social media platform, but also more, because you have content, you have blog posts, and also you have the possibility to connect with both scholars and practitioners in the field of esotericism. So it's a great way for you to really get in contact with lots of people that have your same interests. And also RENSEP runs monthly events. Like now I'm the one talking, but I'm given that I'm the chair of these events, I know them really well. So every month RENSEP also has an Ask a Scholar or Ask a Practitioner event, where there's an invited guest who's either a scholar or a practitioner, and then members can come on the chat and they can ask all of their questions. Obviously, it's going to be based on the expertise of the scholar or the practitioner that we have in the event. And also we do study groups every month, and again, I participate in those as well. And we had a great study group on Tanya Luhrmann, How to Become God, recently. And that, so we had a few study groups on the book, unpacking the different chapters. And it was a really lively and intense philosophical discussion. And then that culminated in inviting Tanya Luhrmann herself to an Ask a Scholar event. So everybody was pretty knowledgeable at that point about her work, because we had worked on it during the study groups. So there's really a lot going on with RENSEP, and if you sign up, it's also gonna help fund research projects, because that's also something that RENSEP does. So can you tell us a bit more about the research projects that you have funded or are funding now?
Should I step in here?
Go on.
Yeah, we have funded, for instance, a PhD research project for 1 year from Zhang Liu, who studied, who is the daughter of a Chinese I Ching diviner, and studied the group's history and how I Ching is transmitted under repressive circumstances in contemporary China. Then we had a few smaller fieldwork stipends, for instance, one by Monika Hömer, who did fieldwork in Western tantric communities and compared the practices in these communities with her previous fieldwork in a southern Indian Sri Vidya tantric community, which is more a traditional Indian form of Tantra. And so she kind of juxtaposed Eastern and Western tantric practices, which was also very interesting. And to just give one more example, we are in the final wrapping up of our so-called artist stipend. So we funded an artist called Andrea, help me.
Natasha Moody.
Natasha Moody, for 1 year to produce art as esoteric practice and the other way around. So it was a stipend dedicated to exploring the entanglement between artistic and esoteric practice. And she produced art through various esoteric means and monitored the process through monthly reports. And she presented some of her art just last November in Venice on a conference that was co-organized by my center in Erlangen together with the Cini Foundation in Venice and the HHP in Amsterdam. And sorry?
RENSEP also co-organized.
And RENSEP, of course, yes. And her project focused on southwestern British forest as a landscape that is gradually disappearing, or that has already disappeared under the influence of industrialization and so on. And she kind of explored the grief that is present through this process in the forest, through forms of communicating with plants and local plant spirits, at least how they appeared to Natasha. And she tried to create art that manifests or embodies these contacts between the artist and the forest scape or the landscape. So, for instance, she produced, she took plants and turned them into glass Zauberstab. Come on.
Andrew will translate in the comments. Yeah. Our moderator is a German speaker, so.
Well, she made these unglaublich.
Brambles?
Staff. Yeah, small brambles, staff that are basically glass, but the glass
is stained glass.
No, it's a sort of alchemical process. This is the way she describes it, where she collects plant materials in a state of what she terms a silent communion with nature, and then she transforms them into objects. So the plants are first burned, reduced to ashes, and then I don't know the exact process, but she transmutes these ashes into a glass sort of object. In this case, was a bramble.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, she did this at Arts University Plymouth, who was our academic partner, through professional means of glass production and also metal production. So that was really quite fascinating. So these are three examples.
Yes, then we have also funded the first experimental research on sigil magic in collaboration with Institute of Noetic Sciences. This project was led by Dr. Dean Radin. We have awarded the first tandem paper prize. So this is a prize given for a paper co-authored by a scholar and a practitioner. And we have also funded the archival research of a PhD student, Maria Villanueva Pinal, who studied the correspondence between Živorad Slavinsky, a Serbian occultist, and other occultists of his time, like Michael Berthiaud and Kenneth Grant.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Can you tell us a bit more about how you see the relationship between art and esotericism? Because it seems like RENSEP is very interested in art and in the crossover between art and esotericism. So how do you think that these two areas or fields relate, and how do they inform each other, and why do they matter to somebody who is an esoteric practitioner?
So it's a complex relationship. We have also recently produced a podcast where these questions are discussed. The podcast is published on the Casey website, my Erlangen-based project. So if you're interested in that, because Andrea and I, we were also sitting there, but we were discussing these things with a practicing magician artist, Judith Noble, Professor Judith Noble from Arts University Plymouth, who is also a trustee of RENSEP. And I think a few main arguments will be that art is an area where esoteric practitioners could always play around with ideas and practices, but remain in a form of safe space, because art has this benefit of the doubt, if you like. So it's not totally real. You can always say it is just pretense. And so you have a greater liberality there to play around with esoteric practices and ideas. So this is one component. The second element maybe is that art has always been very close to forms of what we could call spiritual inspiration, because no one really knows where all these artistic inspirations ultimately come from. And so we could say that over the course of the 20th century, especially, more and more artists have deliberately claimed that they don't produce the art by themselves, but they open up to a state where a form of external agency can take their bodies and produce texts or images. So this would be automatic writing or drawing. So it is a form of intrusion of spiritual intelligences into modern culture through art, which is also, I think, an interesting phenomenon in itself. And there will be more arguments. Do you want to continue here, or Andrea?
Yes, I mean, I agree. It's a very complex relationship. I am reminded of an article published by Stanislas de Gaeta, a key figure of fin de siècle French occultism, where he draws a parallel between artists and esoteric practitioners, between the adept and the artist, claiming that both have a connection with the divine, and that the work of the artist is basically an aesthetic translation of that contact with the divine. So it's a very complex question, and we also talk about les arts et sciences occultes, occult sciences and arts. So there is an artistic aspect in esoteric practices. For instance, the fabrication of implements for ritual purposes. The ritual itself is a sort of small play in a way. So we are interested in understanding where we can find overlaps between art and ritual practices, and where these two fields like differentiate one from the other.
And if I may add one more thing. So if we look into the history of Western ritual magic in more narrower terms, of course, there have been strong overlaps between art and ritual for a long time, but especially from the 19th century onwards, it became more intense, with many ritual magicians also becoming novelists, for instance. So there is this shady, there is this fuzzy boundary between fictional magic and ritual practice, which became more and more amalgamated. So I've also published a book about this called Fictional Practice. And one of these people, William Butler Yeats, the famous Nobel Prize winner, who was also a member of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, he developed this interesting theory of what he called talismanic poetry, because he was sure that you can use the imagination, which he distinguishes from fantasy, to produce poetry that affects people across distance, which you could also say is one of the implications of magic, that you're able to affect people over distance. And Yeats, before he became famous, experimented a lot with practices to produce poetry, which is powerful in that it affects his readers more strongly than other poetry he produced. And he even did this in an almost experimental manner for some time with his colleagues at the Golden Dawn. So there are many interesting parallels, especially when it comes to the concept of imagination.
And we have Hank asking a question: how can practitioners help with research?
Well,
in I would say in many ways. So one of the objectives of RENSEP is to create a database of experience reports of ritual scripts. So on a very basic level, practitioners can contribute with their own experiences with experience report. We have a page on the website where they can submit their experience reports. But I would say that the collaboration can go much further than that. So our vision is to create a cross-epistemic hive mind where the discussions between scholars and practitioners can foster the creation of new relations for the study of esoteric practices. So we really want to empower the situation with the capacity of creating new relations. So this is based on the assumption that methodology contains both an ontic and epistemic component. So the way you do research also influences the type of knowledge production that you are having. For instance, you are an anthropologist, Angela, and I think you would agree that the presence of the anthropologist within the social group that he or she is studying also affects that group. So the idea here is to really empower the community with the capacity of creating new relations. So we are right now at the very beginning of this project. The association RENSEP exists only since June 2023. We need to onboard many more members, but the idea is to have research group, research questions that we try to answer together, including both scholarly and practitioners' perspectives.
And if I can add something?
Sure.
So one of RENSEP's goals is also to gradually unfringe the esoteric in the public perception and media discourse, because we think that there are many stereotypes about esoteric and magical practitioners in the public culture and the public perception. And also fears, unjustified fears and guilt motives. And one way how we try to change that game, currently we have a very small team, so we are really only at the beginning, but we want to produce a form of counter-education to the stereotypes in the public media. And for this, in addition to what Andrea said, we want to build a database with experience reports, ritual diaries and ritual scripts and so on. But we also have a blog section where basically everybody can contribute. And we are really interested in collecting as many practitioner voices as possible. So we have an own section in the blog section, which is called Practitioner Voices. And so anybody can contribute an interesting experience or story or ritual description with a specific interpretation or not, or just an artistic description. And this will undergo a small review process and editing process. But in general, we are really open and interested to becoming also a voice for the practitioner, so that from a practitioner perspective, we can gradually change the public perception of magic and esotericism. And anyone can submit blog drafts to RENSEP, to the RENSEP team.
iMisik is asking, how do you see the structure of RENSEP expanding over the next 5, 10, 20 years? It sounds like one of those interview questions. Is there a particular wing of the project that you see becoming the main focus going forward? But it's a good question, though, so don't be offended. iMisik.
It's a very good question. I would say that the creation of the database is certainly one of the main objectives we have for the next years. So a database of experience report and ritual scripts, as I have said, which where each document would be classified according to the type of non-ordinary experience rather than on traditions. But I would say that's an area that I would like RENSEP to expand into is the connection between the field of esotericism and consciousness studies as well. I think that there is a lot to do in that area. For instance, there is a forthcoming article by Professor Wouter Annegraaff, where he talks about this methodology that he terms radical empiricism, where he studies ayahuasca, practices involving ayahuasca, and where he claims that the experience of energies is basically a qualia. And he discusses the possibility of translating personal experiences into academic knowledge. So I think this is an area where RENSEP can also contribute to understand if there is a way of translating personal experiences into academic knowledge, if these two state-specific knowledges can communicate one with the other. And I think there is much to do in that area.
Yeah.
What about you, Bernd? What do you want to see accomplished the most by RENSEP?
Yeah, so I see RENSEP grow and become much bigger than it is today. So we just
that sounds like a prophecy.
Yeah,
I see RENSEP.
No, what I really mean is that RENSEP becomes a really huge social media platform for a large number of practitioners from many different fields, because I think in the area of esotericism and especially Western magic, there has been a lot of isolation. So there are many solo practitioners, or they are in small groups, and there is not much. There is not really an esoteric hive mind or a magical hive mind. There are many rivalries or misunderstandings between different groups. And I think what RENSEP can achieve is build a really neutral, large communication hub for many different practitioners from different groups who are open and willing to engage with other people's perspectives. And in order to learn and grow, I think what we all want, and maybe improve certain aspects of our practice. So right now, I think we are still too small to have that function. But as soon as we have a certain number of practitioners, I hope for a form of grassroots movement from the bottom up, where these dynamics unfold and a form of snowball effect leads to more and more practitioners really seeing the benefit of the platform. So this is what in German we could call maybe Völkerverständigung, you know, communication of the peoples. So this is one vision that I have, apart from, of course, other things.
Conquering the world.
Not conquering the world, but becoming financially sustainable for many years, maybe generations.
Generations to come.
Yeah, generations. Yeah, and continuing what we already do, continuing with our funding scheme and with the journal, building up a useful database, which is useful not only for scholars, but also for practitioners to scan through other people's experience reports and scripts and play around and, yeah, grow together.
Mm. Jessica is asking, do you think the current trends of esoteric content on social media, for instance, WitchTube, is expanding visibility in a positive way, or is it harmful to current and potential practitioners?
So I'm not sure if my Wi-Fi is unstable, but I'm back.
Okay. So I was mentioning Jessica's question about whether you guys think that the current trends of esoteric content on social media, like WitchTube or WitchTalk, are they expanding visibility of esoteric practices in a positive way, or is that harmful to current and potential practitioners?
That's a good question. What do you think, Andrea?
Well, I'm not very familiar with WitchTube, I have to say, but in general, I think that content on the internet lowers the entry point into esoteric practices. So this could be seen either as a good thing or a bad thing, depending on whether you think if that esoteric practices and esotericism is good or not. But of course, much of this material is not based on reliable information, so there are certain dangers associated to it. Yeah. What do you think, Bernd?
Well, I think that WitchTalk and WitchTube, they are manifestations of the fact that the next generation or the young generation is much more open to esoteric practices than all previous generations. And social media is just their means of communicating. I think it's generally a good sign because it shows that magic spreads and that it spreads particularly among the young generations. Maybe it's an effect or a repercussion of Pottermania, and which I think was a global game changer with regard to the public perception of magic and witchcraft. So in generally, I think it's a good development. Of course, maybe some of this massive content may be questionable, but what I think is more problematic is that, to give another example, the manifestation movement is also very prominent on social media. So there are many manifestation trainers on TikTok and YouTube, and it's also an extremely popular movement right now. But the translation of this immense popularity into the so-called mainstream media or the public media is still very poorly done. So in the case of the manifestation movement, for instance, in Swiss television, there were a few months ago several shows on the manifestation movement because the journalists realized that this is really a thing in contemporary spirituality. But in these talk shows, no practitioner was invited, but instead people talked about manifestation who have probably never practiced it, and they spoke about it in the habitus as if it of course does not work. So how do we explain that so many people practice something that does not work? So this, even though I'm really, I think this is normally a good show, but they really failed in this episode because there is still a hesitation to do what RENSEP does, to systematically include practitioners in the discussion and to try to learn from the practitioners, from their own perspectives and experiences. And I think this should be the next step, because there is still a big gap between social media, or what is sometimes called the new media, and the old media. And I think it would be cool if this gap would be closed a bit more.
I suppose that being the one who is on social media the most, I was wondering whether to answer that question as well. So whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, I think it's both in a way. I mean, it's a good thing in the sense of popularizing something and getting it out of the broom closet, as some people would say, so that it is more out in the open and it becomes more popular and therefore hopefully less stigmatized. But it's negative in the sense that a lot of social media content is just for easy consumption and lacks depth and also lacks accuracy because sources are not mentioned, and usually the source is me. I'm saying it, so it's true because I say it. So but I think that is a problem that can be solved by critical thinking, by people becoming more and more demanding in terms of the content creators and the content that they consume on social media, so that the content doesn't just have to be aesthetically appealing or catchy or dramatic or super polarized, but it needs to be informative. And by informative, I mean based on proper sources, on accurate sources. So I think that in and of itself is not a negative thing. It can be positive because it spreads more knowledge and awareness of witchcraft and esotericism. But I encourage people to be more critical and develop their critical thinking more, because unfortunately social media platforms, and this is something that is embedded in the platforms, they tend to promote and give more visibility to people that are extreme, and this has been leading even politically to more and more polarization. People are becoming more and more polarized in their thought because they are constantly exposed to the most shocking thing. So if you are even if you're looking up for a specific political view or a specific view, you're gonna be fed by the algorithm the most shocking and the most extreme thing. So you will start thinking that that specific area, whether political or magical, that those extreme views represent that area. So the perception of people becomes more skewed and more polarized. So I think that never, like in this specific era where social media is affecting us so much, we need to develop critical thinking and not be enticed by the shocking content, but trying to be enticed by the well-sourced educational content instead.
Yeah, I agree. And in a way, these superficial and I don't know, shocking practitioners, they cater to our old stereotypes that we want to overcome, namely that esoteric practitioners are superficial and dramatic. They don't care about efficacy. They are untrustworthy and so on. So I agree.
Then we have another question about what is the science here, classifying esoteric magical phenomena or brain measurements during magical rituals. I think they are referring to the sigil magic experiment. So can you elaborate a bit more on that experiment, how it's been done methodologically, how data has been collected and analyzed?
Yes, so it's an experiment that tests one of the interpretation of the quantum observer effect. So there is this idea that in quantum mechanics, the observer affects reality. And this was done through an interferometer, which was sent to 50 practitioners, and they had to try to influence it to see if the magical practice could influence the quantum mechanics, so the collapse of the wave function. So there was a ray of light in this object, and light can behave either as a particle or as a wave. And the influence of the magician was meant to make the light behave in a certain way. And then, based on statistics, Dean Radin published an article where one of the main findings was that people who identified as magicians had a greater effect on light at a quantum level compared to those who identified as meditators. So this is not conclusive in itself, but we hope that we can fund many more experiments of this sort to study the experimental, study magic experimentally.
Mm.
And the results were just recently published a few weeks ago. We can send the link to the article, Angela, so that you can, I don't know, put it under the YouTube recording.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely send me the link so that I can add it in the description box so that people, when they watch this back, they can access that. Then we got a question about whether RENSEP is connected to Freemasons. I don't know if you want.
Well, the answer is no.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of people tend to connect any sort of occult-related, esoteric-related group with Freemasonry. Maybe that is part of the stigma that Bernd might want to, was talking about. Not that Freemasonry is a bad thing, by the way. It's more like the popular perception of Freemasonry.
Yeah, and by the way, we are not connected to any esoteric organization. RENSEP is totally independent. We have partnerships with several universities, but we don't have any special connection to esoteric organizations or the Freemasons.
Mm. Also, I was thinking that esoteric practitioners are sometimes skeptical of academia, and perhaps scholars may fear compromising their critical stance when we talk about bridging the gap between scholarship and practice. So how do you propose to overcome this mutual problem? I wouldn't call it really mistrust, but this mutual problem.
Well, in terms of practitioner scholarship, this is something which is very common in other fields, right? Such as art. And I think in the field of esotericism is connected, is seen as something potentially leading to religionist or essentialist biases. And this is why it's stigmatized. And also the field of esotericism is very young. And for the last 20 years, it has had to establish itself as a valid academic field. And now I think it's time to move on and to include also practitioners' perspectives, as we do in RENSEP, but also to see practitioner scholarship as a valid methodology, which in my opinion is not better than any other methodology, but it's something that can contribute to expanding our knowledge on esoteric practices. And I think that Bernd can say more about that because he has just published a very interesting article specifically on this topic. You want to say a few words about that, about the methodology that you described, Bernd?
Yeah, I could do that, but I'm not sure if Angela's question was more directed towards how practitioners perceive academics and academic research. You mean these stereotypes that practitioners might still have?
That was part of it, yes, and also the fact that it was more really about how the two can connect with each other when some practitioners at least are a bit skeptical of academics, and academics may fear to compromise their position.
Yeah, so we have been discussing this quite a bit because we don't want to come across as a scholarly organization that just wants to mine practitioners and kind of take the data. We really have something very different in mind, namely to form as a hub knowledge production hub where practitioners and scholars are equal and meet and discuss esoteric practices from the theoretical, the historical, but also the practical angle. And I think, yeah, there might still be these stereotypes, and we know that some practitioners remain skeptical. What we hope to achieve is just to continue our work and through a lot of communication show that we don't represent the old academia, if you like. So we are really interested in creating a new approach, a new cross-epistemic hive mind, as I think Andrea said earlier. So we want to combine different approaches to knowledge production, because every practitioner is also, I mean, it's a truism, but every practitioner is also an explorer in a way, and a scientific self-observer, which you can see in some very meticulous ritual diaries in some of the traditions where this is required. So we hope to do maybe also a series of meetings with practitioners in the future where we can discuss these stereotypes and hopefully overcome them. And practitioner scholarship, as Andrea said, is for me one additional angle where we try to include practitionership as one element in academic scholarship. So kind of overcome the stereotype that as soon as you become subjective and have an own experience, then you should be forbidden to include this in your scholarly data, because it is not objective but subjective, which is exactly the point in esoteric experiences. And yeah, I've written about this recently. I've tried to develop a methodology for doing practitionership or practitioner scholarship in a way so that the data that a practitioner scholar like me or Andrea or anyone else who also practices, that the data we produce during the practice, that it can also become of our writing, of our analysis, so that we can, for instance, compare our own experiences with the experience of other practitioners. Because otherwise you could only work with material, with experience reports experienced by others, which is also kind of a weird approach, where this strong ideology of objectivism has brought us, I think. So, as Andrea said, there are other disciplines, for instance, also martial arts studies, or also Pentecostal theology. You know, there is a branch of theology done or written by Pentecostals, which is also very akin to experiences and to the subjective dimension, or the manifestation of the Holy Spirit, as these theologians would say. And I think if we manage to open up the study of esotericism also to include practitionership in our work, then much would be gained for bridging this gap between scholars and practitioners.
Yes, and I would like to add, sorry, Angela, that certain forms of esotericism are based on experiences, on altered state of consciousness. This is what Anne Graf calls entheogenic esotericism. So I think that personal experiences are particularly important to understanding those type of esotericism, where altered states are induced either by psychotropic drugs, but also through psychophysical techniques such as breathing, reciting mantras, fasting, and so on.
So, Bernd, given that you criticized the objectivity that is usually claimed to be part of academic studies, I kind of begs the question as to what do you think about it, and why do you think that it's not a correct methodology? I mean, what is your criticism around the idea of objectivity in academic studies?
Well, that's a long story. So I don't criticize the idea of objectivity per se, even though I think it belongs more into the sciences, into experimental sciences, than into
The natural
humanities-based
sciences,
research.
okay.
Yeah, the natural sciences. In humanities-based research, for instance, in religious studies or in history, or also in anthropology, but in anthropology, the situation has been quite different because field work has become so crucial. But in general, what I criticize is just the idea that you should, by all means, avoid to keep your own subjective viewpoint out of the debate or out of your own knowledge production. And I think, of course, this has already been critically discussed in the last decades. So the positionality of the researcher has become more and more important. But there is still this fear of including own experiences, and especially in the realm of esotericism, these experiences might be practice induced, and they might be intense, extraordinary. They might include visions and so on. So they are highly subjective in the sense that they are not intersubjectively verifiable. So no other person, even standing next to you, might share the experience and be able to verify it, or to even only share it. And I think these experiences are, in the study of esotericism, what it's all about. So what I criticize is that you study something where you forbid yourself to
engage fully in it,
to be part of the game, basically. And this I think should change. I don't know if that.
And I'm curious to know I'm curious to know what you think, Angela, about that, since you asked that question.
Me?
Yes.
You want to open a can of worms? Yeah, as you guys know, there are some points where I agree and some points where I disagree with you. So I think that it is that there is a space to include subjective experiences in autoethnography. Could be because I'm in anthropology of religion, so I'm particularly familiar with how to deal with your own experiences during field work and during what's the term? The participatory observation type of methodology that you do. So I think that there is a space for that in ethnographic reports. When it comes to analyzing, so if I'm an anthropologist and I'm on the field, and I have experiences during the field, during the rituals that I'm participating in, if it really depends on what my research question is. So, for instance, in my research, I've studied shamanism and I've studied Italian witchcraft. So if I'm in a shamanic ritual and my objective is understanding how the community constructs the ritual and constructs their experiences during that ritual, my contribution doesn't help respond to the research question, because it's not about me, it is about studying that community. So yes, my experiences are important, but it's not pertinent in that specific context to include them. Whereas there might be cases where it could be pertinent. It really depends on the research question. So I don't think that in all cases your personal experience should enter the data collection. It completely depends on what the research question is, and so I think that objectivity is as a term is a bit outdated and based on a reductivist approach of reality, which I don't agree with. So I don't agree with the fact that there is even something that can be objective. I think that there is, that's why I tend to talk more about accuracy rather than objectivity. I think that you can get more accurate, as accurate as you possibly can, but objectivity is not something that belongs to human beings, because everything that we see, even with the hard sciences and the natural sciences, everything is filtered through our senses that are not seeing everything that is there. They're only seeing what our senses allows us to see, or we're using other tools like, I don't know, a microscope or whatever you're using, which are also only able to see a certain spectrum of what is in front of us. So in this way, I'm very Kantian. I'm with Immanuel Kant, with the fact that there is a limit to our knowledge, and the limit is the fact that we are always filtered. So that's why I don't believe in objectivity, not even when we talk about natural science. But I think that the reductivist approach is very useful to understand the material world, the physical world, and it's very unuseful when we try to understand social phenomena like esoteric practices. So I think that given that the reductivist method has been so effective with natural sciences and understanding the physical world, people have assumed that it was going to work for any field of study, and I think that assumption is wrong. I think that the method of natural science was specifically constructed around a theoretical framework that would work excellently in an excellent way to studying the material world, and in a very inaccurate way to study everything that goes beyond the physicality of what we have around us. So I don't think that reductivist methods or theoretical frameworks can work well to get accurate information in social sciences or humanities, or indeed religious studies and the study of historic practices.
So we're exactly on the same page, Angela.
Yeah, I think that you read. No, I think. Well, I don't know if you want to enter into that kind of thing. Like, for instance, I disagree with the fact that magic practices can be proven by science. For instance, for the reason that I've just explained, I don't think that you can effectively run experiments that are tailored to the physical world to prove the effectiveness of esoteric practices. So maybe that is a point where we disagree. I don't know.
But so no, I'm interested in this this specific question because practitioners of magic, they claim that it can affect the probability of an event from happening, right? So don't you think that with science it's possible to study if there is a magical effect?
Well, I'd be very happy to be wrong, and I think that it's great that there are research and that you're funding research on that. So I don't claim to be the truth in here, but personally, I don't think that it is possible, and I don't think that it's possible because the way that magic works is not through something that a reductivist approach and a reductivist method can really study. And studies that try to do that always ending into the realm of pseudoscience, just because they have to reduce the level of accuracy that you would use in a natural science experiment to tailor for something that just doesn't fit the reductivist mold. Because it's like, you have to think that science always, by its own nature, reduces everything to the material side, right? So, and that works well when it comes to studying the physical world. So the whole method, the whole theoretical framework is based to flatten what you have in front of you, and you only study the physical side. So if you are studying love with using the natural science methodology, you're only thinking about biochemicals. You're thinking about the hormonal reactions. You're thinking about only the physical side of love, despite the fact that love is goes much beyond that, right? So I would argue the same thing about studies that have to do with love, for instance, because all those studies, only to follow the method of natural science, you have to remove the nature of love or esoteric practices so that you can only study the physical side, and you have to completely cut out all the holistic side of esoteric practices that are
Angela,
an integral element.
Can I intervene here? So I think what
I told you this
RENSEP,
was a can of worms.
what RENSEP, so you very much have this natural sciences enemy here, but
It's not. I don't think it's an enemy. I think it's very effective
yeah. So I agree that magic, according to many practitioners, has very subtle and indirect effects that are hard to measure. I wouldn't even want to use the word measure, but what RENSEP wants to do is combine several methodologies and perspectives through a dedicated practitioner lens. So what that means is, instead of making an experimental study of magic, whatever that means, is, for instance, let's take manifestation movement as an example. Say there is a famous manifestation trainer who fills a hall with 10,000 manifestation practitioners, right? No one has ever asked these 10,000 manifestation practitioners regarding their ongoing successes, their own perception of their own efficacy of their own practices. And so this is also research and scholarship which has never been done. And it is practitioner-based and multi-perspectival. So what that means is, if we would have the funds and the means to do it, I think it would be very interesting to tap onto the everyday perception of practitioners who have always tried to measure their own the efficacy of their own practices, but no one has ever systematically tried to connect the dots and to as RENSEP want to do, build a database with thousands of experience reports, and then based on this large data, look for patterns, look for things that seem to work and that rather don't seem to work, and so on. So this is, if you like, it's a qualitative approach based on large data. But I think today this is possible. This would be possible, and I think it would be very interesting. And this is not reductive, but it is inductive and data based. So this is something
the
that
database. I think it's
RENSEP has in mind.
Yeah. No, I think the database is definitely something that would be incredibly valuable. I think any type of research is valuable, to be fair, because we can only really gather whether something is correct or not by experimenting on things. So I never disagree with experiments. I think, as long as you try to make the methodology as accurate as possible, we can only get more data and get a better understanding. I'm never too attached to my own thoughts on things because I think that in order to be a person that's able to grow, I have very strong personal beliefs, opinions, and so on, but I'm always open to change my mind when evidence suggests otherwise. So it's just the passionate Italian side that always comes up when I have an opinion on something. But I think that it's great to have a database and also to run the experiments.
Yeah.
Which is also a good segue into another question, which is there any room to see subjective experiences as qualitative data instead of the need of quantitative data to make it count with the value it can add to the analysis?
Well, this is basically the question to my previous answer, right? So I think it is possible. Yeah. We currently don't have the manpower to do it.
The what?
The manpower, the funds, and
the manpower. Okay.
To do such large-scale analysis, but it is within the 5-year vision, let's say.
And Sean is asking whether RENSEP is focused on modern magic, ancient magic, or both.
Yeah, both. So we are a lively network of living practitioners. So I guess the focus is more on contemporary practice and the practice of the actual practitioners. But we do include historical research in our blogs, and in the study groups and so on. So we, as you know, Angela, because you have moderated them, we had study groups on several grimoires, like the Ars Notoria or the Liber Iuratus. So people practicing, for instance, medieval scripts. So there is a strong historical dimension, of course. So I would say both.
Jessica is asking very kindly, do you need any volunteer help at RENSEP? I'd be interested to help, but I'm no PhD.
We always need volunteers, so feel free to reach out to us, Jessica, at info@rensep.org.
Yeah, thank you, Jessica. She's
you get a free
valuable
membership pass, of course.
Yep.
Sorry.
Yeah,
so
Jessica is a very valuable patron. Yeah, anybody who wants to help, I mean, it's always welcome. So is there anything else that you would like to say about RENSEP that we haven't covered yet before we wrap up?
Well, I think I would like to invite all your viewers to join RENSEP at rensep.org or on our social media channels with the handle @rensep_official. And yeah, it's really a collaborative project, so every contribution is valuable for us. So feel free to reach out to us, even if you have ideas of how we can improve the project.
Yeah, absolutely. I also recommend you guys to join as a RENSEP member. You will also find a lot of content from me and a lot of events moderated by me. So you know, it will feel like home for you. So you can just so definitely join in, and that's gonna help the project.
So just to give that additional information, we do have a yearly membership fee. And I think your members, Andrea, I think it's correct that they get a 50% discount code on the yearly membership.
Yes. That's correct.
Which
we can add the discount code in the description of the video, but it's Angela, simply Angela.
Yeah.
Very nice and simple.
Yeah.
And so with the discount code, it amounts to I think a cappuccino per month, or even less. I think cappuccinos today cost €4 in many locations, so it's much less than that. And we think compared to other academic association, it's I think it's quite a good deal because you get a lot of content and a very lively network. So eventually we're still looking for larger donations. So at some point in the near or distant future, we might also shift to a non-membership model. But right now, this is our only option to do what we want to do with the support of our members. So you could see this as a form of donation to a promising project, which we hope fills certain needs. And will conquer the world eventually. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to be serious, but it just end up being me. But yeah, guys, definitely join RENSEP because it's a great platform, and Andrew has just put it in the chat. You will find the links in the description box as well, so check out those. So thank you, Andrea and Bernd, for coming over and talking about RENSEP. And I'll see you again soon, very soon.
Thanks a lot for the invitation, Angela.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
So to all of you guys watching here or watching later, don't forget to smash the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and activate the notification bell so that every time that I'm live or that I post a new video, you don't have to rely on the capricious algorithm to show my video in the feed. And yeah, I hope that you're gonna join RENSEP. Remember, it's at rensep.org, and you will find the link in the description box as well. Thank you all so much for being here, and I really hope that you stay tuned for all the academic fun. Bye for now.